Okay, so my name's Chris Gregan. I'm founder of a company called Fungus Games. It's an indie game studio based in Ireland. The founders are myself, Ronan Pearce and John O'Kane. We've all worked in the games industry for over 13 years, and I was previously chief architect for a company called Play First in San Francisco. They'd be best known for the mobile games Diner Dash and Cooking Dash. And the three of us on the founder team have written lots of game engine and tools kind of code over the years. So Fungus basically helps creative people to make storytelling games in Unity. We were inspired by easy-to-use open source storytelling tools like Twine, RenPy, and Scratch, and especially by the thriving online communities around those tools. So Fungus, it basically has the same vision as Unity itself. We want to democratize game development. And we want to do that by opening it up to just new groups of people, and particularly people who can't code. So Fungus and its documentation, free and open source, MIT license, there's no restrictions whatsoever, and we provide free support for all users on our forum, regardless of their skill level. Our goal is really to build up a large community of creative storytellers around this tool. So people wonder, like, how do we make money? Well, so we're selling an online training course. On the website you can find out details of that. It's aimed at beginners, but we have a lot of free tutorial videos and free documentation as well. We're also working on some games using Fungus ourselves, and we're also working to develop some services to help, I guess, ourselves and our community to promote and sell the games that are being made with Fungus. So our website is fungusgames.com. We have tons of free resources on there, including there's a catalogue of games that have been created by our community so far. There's loads of documentation and tutorial videos, and also a community forum. We're getting around maybe 4,000 or 5,000 users a month on the site at the moment, and it's continuously growing, and about the same on YouTube. Just to mention the community aspect of Fungus, it's been incredible. Just to give you some examples, there's a guy, Paul McGrath, who's recorded like hours worth of tutorial videos for us. There's a guy, Eric Chen, who's localized all those videos into Chinese. There's Matt Smith, who's the author of the Unity Cookbook series. He wrote all our documentation. In Dublin, there's Vicky Lee from Coding Grace, has organized loads of Fungus workshops, including one next month with Coder Girls to coincide with International Day of the Girl. And just dozens of other people have contributed to this project in different ways and are helping it to succeed. And I'm very, very thankful to everybody for their generosity and support so far. It's been amazing, you know. And none of it would happen if this wasn't open source. So I'm just going to show a video of some games people have made. So this is Hedgehog Holmes by David Carey. It's on Google Play. This is Sherlock the Game is On by Improbable Studios. This is a group of 200 Sherlock Holmes fans in 40 different countries who are making a Sherlock Holmes game because they like Sherlock Holmes. It's completely free. This is Curtain by Laura McGee. This game won the grand prize at Amaze 2015 in Berlin. This is Space Farm by me. And some friends, and it's about a robotic turkey farmer who lives on the moon. Grandad's Nozbot. This is One More Night by Leaf Thief. This was done for the Game Boy Jam. This is The Hollow by Tom Irony. This was done for the IGDA, had a Write a Game challenge in June. There was 91 entries for that, and there was pro and amateur category, and Fungus Games won in both categories. So that was really cool. This is Grandpa Pip's Birthday by my co-founders, John and Ronan. And this is another game I've been working on for the last couple of years called Snozbot's Text Adventure. So we kind of have this common theme of narrative games and the stuff we're doing as well. Cool. Okay, so that's the boring slides done. I'm going to just do, for the rest of the talk, I'm going to do just a live demo of using Fungus and showing you the various features. Okay. All right, so when you download Fungus from the asset store, what you get is basically these two folders, Fungus and Fungus Examples. Fungus is the library. Fungus Examples is about 60 megs worth of different demo scenes and stuff to show you some of the features. So this is the a scene from that Sherlock game that was in the video. I'll just play through. Okay, so Fungus is basically this flowchart here and a kind of a custom inspector window. So you have a flowchart object in your scene, and you can have multiple flowcharts. But for a simple game, you'd usually only have one. And a flowchart is basically the high-level overview of your game. It's made out of these blocks that are connected together, and within a block, you can inspect a list of commands. So I can just click on a command here to see the properties for it. And we can see the currently executing command here. It's a say command. So as I click through the game, you can see it just moves on to the next command in the list. And these portrait commands are controlling the characters on the stage. The say command is writing text out to the dialog box. And I'll just click through the story a little bit. Okay, so we're about to move on to the next block here, this drink the coffee decision block. We just executed two menu commands, and a menu command will display basically a choice to the user what option to do next. So we can either drink the coffee or not drink it, so let's drink. And then you can see over in the flowchart, executions moves over to the left-hand side of the flowchart. So it's a real simple way to kind of set up branching narrative in your story. Okay, so I'm going to just go through the process of making like a really simple, stupid Fungus game from scratch, just to show you the different features. So I'll just make a new scene. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is drop a sprite in here. Actually all of our examples are sprite-based, but there's nothing stopping you using Fungus in a 3D game, and lots of people have done that, like over an RPG or something like that. We just use 2D because we like 2D games, and it's kind of easier for beginners, I think, to kind of get the concepts. Okay, so there's a sprite, and let's add in a Fungus view object over the top. So we go Fungus create view. So this is basically like a camera shot. Okay, and I'm going to add in a Fungus flowchart into the scene. Okay, I'll select this block. I'm just going to rename it to start. Let's make sure it activates at the startup. Okay, so now I'm going to add a command to this block. And I'm going to fade into our view object. So I need to just select which view object I want to fade to. So I'll just pick the one we created there. I might just rename that as well while I'm here. View 8. Okay, so if I press play now, we start with a fade in to that sprite. Okay, so now let's add in a little bit of narrative. So we'll use the say command. So if I go to the narrative group here, I can just add in a say command, and I can just type in something like, good morning. Let me try that again. There you go. Right. So that's kind of the hello world example of using Fungus. So let's do something a little bit more complex. So I'm going to add in a variable. Oh, let's stop. So let's add a string, and we'll call this one location, and we're in the, it's kind of wet looking, so we'll call it the soggy forest. Right. And then I'm going to go back to my say command. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm just going to type in some different text here. So, okay, and you can embed kind of custom tags inside the text, like sort of markup to do different effects. So, and you can get the list of those by this tag help button over here. So that's all the all the different tags that we support. So just a couple of examples would be W is a wait command, so it adds like for a dramatic pause or something like that. The I tag will put the text into italics. /I. And then we can do kind of more advanced stuff like variable substitution. So I can do $, the name of a variable, and it'll automatically put it into the text. And then we have some kind of special effects like flashing and shaking the screen. So we'll put a flash as well. Okay, let's try that. Good morning, pause, italics, and then like a flash effect at the end. So I don't know if you ever played like Ace Attorney or one of those games. It's really easy to kind of set up that kind of objection kind of thing. Okay, so now let's do some branches. So I'm going to add in 2 menu commands. Just duplicate that. And then 2 blocks for those menu commands to link to. So we'll call this one follow the path. And we'll call this one just stay put. Okay. Then I go back to my menu commands and I can link those then to those blocks. So follow the paths and stay put. So then I'm just going to move the camera when we follow the path. So what I'll do here is I'll just duplicate the view object that we added before. And I'm just going to make it smaller. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Maybe rotate it a little. Okay, so when we follow the path, there's no commands there yet, so let's add something in. So I'll use the camera here, and I will do a move to view, which is kind of like a camera pan. And I just have to tell it which view I want to use. So we'll pick the one that I just duplicated. And we'll say that'll take, I guess, 3 seconds. Let's try that out. Okay, and then we have our 2 buttons, and I never change the names. Let's do it quick. Okay, so let's say follow path and stay put. Okay, so if we follow the path, you see execution has gone over to this block here, and we did that move command. Okay, so let's do some more stuff with variables. So if I add in, say, a Boolean variable. So say earlier on in the game, maybe something happened and the path was blocked. So we don't have that option available anymore. So if I go back up here, what I can do is I can add in an if statement. So I go flow if. And around the option to go down the path, we can kind of exclude that if the variable is set. So we go if path blocked is true, no, it's false actually, then we'll allow you to go down the path. So let's see that working. Okay, so you can see we only did the, we skipped over the menu command there. So that lets you do kind of more sophisticated stuff than just doing branches. You know, you can kind of have a bit of logic in there, and the player's choices can actually affect what options are presented to the user. Okay, so with just that, you have enough kind of basic functionality to make a kind of a branching narrative game without doing any coding. So let's go a little bit more advanced now and add in some characters. So we've added a character object to the scene there, and we'll call this guy John. And then this is the text that actually appears in the dialog box. So we'll just call that John as well. And then we add in a couple of portrait images for that character. So I'll just set a few here. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is add in a portrait command to control that character on the stage. Narrative. Okay, so we're going to show the character. We're going to show the John character, and yes, I have to add a stage object in first. So Fungus create stage. And we're going to use, say, the apologetic portrait that we added earlier on. Then I'll just duplicate that portrait command and add it in after the first say command. So we'll change him then to be annoyed. And we also want him to appear at the left-hand side of the stage. Okay, so here's our portrait, and then when I click, okay, sorry, I'll do that again. Oh no, it worked actually, yeah. So he was originally apologetic, then he turned to annoyed. So. Okay, so in the last version of Fungus, we added in support for some UI stuff. So I can actually add in, let me see, if I go and add a canvas to the scene, I can add a text object to that. And I can basically control this text object with a write command. So if I go back here and if I add in UI write, I can point it to this. I can point it to this text object, and I can write whatever I like here. So what I'm going to do is location, and again I'm going to use variable substitution. So I'll put in our location variable here, and I'll just edit the canvas so this is more visible. Okay, hit play. Okay, so I wrote out the text and then put a variable in there. So the point there is you can write to things that aren't just those dialogues. You can write to any text object, and it can be a text mesh as well or an input field, so it's pretty flexible. And with the next release, we're actually adding in a lot more UI commands to let you do things like tweening, like moving the UI around, fades and scaling things and different operations. I'll move along. So I'm actually going to switch over just to show some of the examples, just to speed things up a little bit. So this one is Fungus Town. So it's a real short demo, but what it's showing is there's basically a parallax sprite object we have in Fungus, which you can just drop in, and it gives you some nice kind of parallax scrolling effects. There's also commands in there for audio, and like there's an example there of using particle systems, and fading sprites in and out, that kind of thing. There's also commands that hook into the mechanim system in Unity, so you can control any animation with just like five Fungus commands that let you control anything in mechanim. There's a full localization system in here as well. So if you want to support other languages, basically you add a localization object to your scene, and there's like an export localization file button, and what that'll do is spit out a CSV file that you can open up in like LibreOffice or Excel or whatever, and add in extra columns for whatever languages you want to support. We also have drag and drop and kind of object clicking support. So if you look at, say, this block down here, object clicked, this has been set up to use, we call them event handlers. So this one is using the object clicked event handler. The one we've seen so far is the game started event handler for when the game begins, right? So if I click on this sprite here, that block will activate, and if I click on this one, that block activates. And more sophisticated version of that is the drag and drop. So these blocks over here are set up to handle various drag and drop operations. So that's really good for, particularly for children's apps, maybe like hidden object games or e-learning apps. Okay, I'm going to switch over to do a little bit of coding. So I just want to show how easy it is to integrate Fungus with C# scripting in Unity. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my example scene. And I'm going to set this not to have an event handler. So basically when I start the game, the flowchart doesn't execute. So nothing happens. And instead I'm going to use some C# script to activate the flowchart. So I've added in a prefab just to make this a little bit quicker to do. It's really, really simple. So this object here, it's just a game object with a flowchart demo custom script, which we can go and edit. And basically, this is just a mono behavior, and it has a flowchart object and a location property there. And in the start method, we're calling flowchart.setString variable, which will set the location variable to Boston. And then after that, we're going to tell the start block to execute using the execute block command or method. So if I just make this point at the right flowchart. Okay, so you're standing in a Boston now. Okay. Okay, and then we can actually go the other direction as well. So when this start block executes, we can use the scripting invoke method command. And this will allow us to basically call a function on any game object using reflection. So I'm going to use the same game object with the same script and call a function on that script. So we're going to use the flowchart demo component, and then we've got the log message method, which has been added in that script. So that's basically this function here. Okay. And so we automatically look and see what parameters are on that function. And so I'm going to call, let's see, I'm going to go hi there, right? And all that function does is just calls debug log. So it's going to spit out whatever we send to it onto the console. And if you look in the console, there's our message. Okay, so that lets you go in both directions, from C# into Fungus, and then from Fungus back out again to C#. The invoke method command, it's pretty powerful. It supports stuff like return values, so you can actually get like a value back from a script function. It also supports coroutines, so you can start a coroutine and wait for it to finish before your block will continue execution. So if you can code, it's pretty powerful. So another thing is that Fungus is very extensible. So we've added in a system for creating custom commands, which it couldn't be much simpler. So this is an example of one for rotating the camera. Basically, you just use the Fungus namespace. You add in a class attribute. So this is basically the group for the command, the name of the command, and then a description of the command to show in the editor. Then you have your class inherit from the command class in Fungus. You add in whatever properties you want. So here we've just got a float variable for rotation. And then you only have to implement the onEnter method. And so here what we're doing is we're taking the main camera and we're going to rotate it by whatever value is in the rotation variable here. And then the only thing you need to do is call continue at some point so that execution will move on to the next command in the flowchart. So we can see that in our example scene here. So if I click the plus button to add in a new command, you can see we have a my commands group and a rotate camera command that we can use, and it has just that float property that I set to 45. And there we go, there's the camera. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Just go back to the slides for a sec. Oops, 1 sec. Yeah, so I guess Fungus makes storytelling in Unity easy for creative people who just don't really want to code, you know. It also has powerful features for experienced coders. So I hope you give it a go and you know, join in with our nice little community of game makers. If you get stuck or you have a question, like please just post on the forum. Like we try to get back to everybody within a day usually, and that's it. So thank you very much. Have we time for questions? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yep. Yeah. Well, when you're running on the text in that game, that is just a collider. That is just like a text mesh object on there. Where Fungus in that comes up in that game is when you there's basically triggers like objects that you can go up and kind of interact with. So we're using Fungus to pop up a dialog box at that point to kind of give you some information about that object. So it's really an example of using Fungus on top of a totally different type of game, right? So I think that's the point. Is that like you don't make Fungus games, you make Unity games with Fungus in them, for doing a bit of storytelling. But if you want to, you can only use Fungus in your game as well, Whatever you can do in Unity, you can do. So if you have a trigger in your scene and you can get something to interact with that trigger, you can use that to activate a Fungus flowchart, So it's very flexible that way. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
This is pretty basic. Is there a simple way to jump ahead in your flowchart so you're not always starting to play at the beginning of
Yeah.
a particular flowchart?
Yeah, there is. Yeah. There's a couple of ways you can do it. What you can do is set up a block to handle a key press. So say you want to map like 1 to 5 to certain blocks. And what you can do is, they're basically like cheat codes. So they skip ahead into the story. So you have that block, which will just have a call command in it, which will activate a block further down into the story. So you can kind of set up all these shortcuts for yourself as a developer. Also, we've added in support for, basically if you hold down the shift key and press space, or whatever key is set up for going through the dialog boxes, it doesn't wait when it does a say command. So it zooms through the dialog. So within like a second or two, you can kind of get to the part of the story where you want to see your changes or whatever. Yeah. So there's a few ways of doing it. Yep.
Is there an easy way to persist the state of all the variables you have in Fungus?
We have a system, like there's two commands, save variable and load variable, and they basically wrap player prefs. So you can take a Fungus variable and save it to a key in player prefs. There's also kind of a profile system there where you can have player 1 has their set of saved variables and then player 2 has a separate set. We don't have a save game command yet, and that's mainly because of, limitations in Unity, like with serialization and stuff. It's been a common thing on the forums. People have been asking about it. It's a very tough problem to solve. Except there's a thing that they've just brought out called JSON serialization, which might be the answer to this problem. So today I'm hoping to talk to the engineer that wrote that and have a chat about it. Yep.
There's a way to write all of your dialogue commands in a separate text editor just as a script.
You mean like an Excel sheet or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, so right now what you can do is you can make your flowchart, put say commands, menu commands. You can export that out to a text file, and then you can go and edit that text file in a text editor. So if you want to do find and replace or spell checking, so it's handy for that workflow. We do have a request to add in like a support for basically defining the commands in a spreadsheet, and then kind of making like populating a block from that spreadsheet. So it's on the roadmap. We don't have it just yet. So that JSON serialization thing I just mentioned might actually help a lot with implementing that as well. So.
I know there's some developers that use Twine as a prototyping engine, that they convert that into Unity.
Yeah. We don't. Again, I think there's a request in there to do a Twine importer and a RenPy importer. So, Twine is just an XML format, so it should be possible to map from like a Twine block to a Fungus block. The interaction with Twine is different though, because they have this, it's HTML, right? So they have like hyperlinks and stuff in the middle of the text. And our dialog boxes aren't designed to do that, but it could be extended to do that, I guess. Yeah. It's all open source as well, so the code is there, and we're very welcoming of pull requests when people do want to go and extend it with new features like that. And our backlog is all on GitHub as well, so I think there's like 150 different feature requests in there at the moment, so it's pretty crazy. But, yep. Any other questions? All right. Okay, thank you.